Hi, I'm Tamara, and what you're about to hear isn't just about a launch party gone wrong. My parents took the company I built, my dream, and handed it to my brother like it was his birthright. They rewrote the guest list. They cut my name from the press. And the worst part? They smiled, like it was nothing. I stood backstage, watching him take credit for everything I created. But what really broke me? It wasn't the applause he got. It was realizing they never planned for me to shine. So I took the mic, and I told the truth. But what happened after? That, you'll have to see for yourself. I was halfway through my second coffee when I saw the article. It had landed in my inbox sometime before dawn, forwarded by an old college friend with the subject line, "Your company made TechSpark." For a brief second, my heart actually fluttered. TechSpark was big in Boulder. Getting featured meant people in the startup ecosystem were finally noticing me, noticing TechSense. I clicked the link. By the time the headline loaded, my hand had already turned cold around the coffee mug. Dillard family launches promising AI venture, led by Romy Dillard. I blinked, scanned the byline, read it again. Then I scrolled, paragraph after paragraph of polished praise. Charismatic. Visionary. A bold new voice in emotional AI. Not once did my name appear. Not as co-founder, not as developer, not as anything. It was like I didn't exist. I minimized the browser tab and pulled up the business registration I'd saved on my desktop. The name was still there. TechSense LLC, founded by Tamara Wozniak, with a sudden, quiet addition. Right beside mine, in equal font weight, Romy Dillard. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at it and whispered, "How long?" I called the Colorado Business Registry, played it cool. "Just verifying corporate structure updates," I said. The woman on the other end was kind, efficient. She told me the co-founder update had been submitted 3 weeks ago. Filed through my father's firm. No signature from me required. Of course not. Not when it was family. I let out a breath, long and slow. I was used to being rewritten, erased, replaced. It started in Iowa. Back when we lived in Des Moines, I was the older child, the quiet achiever, as my mom liked to call it when guests were around. But really, I was more like the invisible daughter, the one who followed the rules, the one who gave up her room at age 11 when Romy needed space to express himself. I moved downstairs next to the laundry room. No one asked. They just swapped my things while I was at school. I still remember coming home and seeing my bed shoved up against the utility sink. "Sweetie," my mom said without looking up, "you're more adaptable. Don't make it a thing." And that became the family motto. Don't make it a thing. Romy was the star. He painted on walls, hummed loudly through dinner, made up plays, and forced us to watch. When I came home with a first-place science trophy, Dad barely glanced at it. But when Romy came home with a D+ in music class and a creative note from his teacher, they bought him a new keyboard. By high school, it was clear. He was the heart. I was the hands. It wasn't just favoritism. It was institutionalized. Our family photos always had Romy in the middle. I was either cropped at the edge or missing entirely. At school, more than once, people asked if I was Romy's cousin. My mom never corrected them. When I got into University of Colorado Boulder on a partial scholarship, I was ecstatic. But my dad? He just looked over his glasses and said, "We'll have to see how that fits in with Romy's summer program in LA." I took out loans, lived in a sublet with no central heat, ate oatmeal for dinner for 2 semesters straight, built a life one spreadsheet at a time, and yet, somehow, when I built something from the ground up, when TechSense went from a late-night coding hobby to a viable beta-stage platform, it wasn't my success anymore. It was a Dillard family venture. Of course it was. The call came 2 months ago, my dad. "Sweetheart, Romy's getting good traction on social. You should think about making him more visible. He's a great communicator. You focus on the logic, he handles the optics." I had paused, then said, "You want him to be the face of the company I built?" His response? "We're all in this together." No, we weren't. I had been alone when I filed the paperwork, alone when I begged for my first investor meeting, alone in every cafe pitch session I booked off Craigslist leads, alone when the first beta client ghosted me. And alone when I got the second one to say yes? Only 2 people ever believed in me from the start. My grandparents, Mira and Eldon. They didn't know tech, but they knew how to look you in the eye and say, "We trust your judgment." That counted for more than I realized back then. Now, sitting in my apartment in Boulder, fingers numb and a sour taste creeping up the back of my throat, I opened the link again. There it was. TechSense, the future of AI emotion, driven by Romy Dillard. A family name, a borrowed legacy, my work. The apartment buzzed with quiet, just the sound of my kettle switching off in the background and a dog barking somewhere down the street. I didn't move. My phone vibrated. A message from Mila, the same college friend. "This is so cool. When did Rami start working with you?" My reply was slow. He didn't. But maybe that wasn't the truth anymore. Maybe he was working with me, around me, over me. The worst part? I wasn't shocked. Not really. Somewhere deep down, I had always known. That room they took from me at 11 was just the first thing. This company might be the last thing they try to take, but they weren't going to get away with it. Not this time. The sun had slipped behind the flatirons, casting the city in that golden haze that only lasts 10 minutes a day. I stood in the kitchen, stirring a lukewarm cup of chamomile tea I hadn't touched in hours. I wasn't tired, just drained. Like someone had taken the air out of me and left me standing half alive. That's when I found it. An old voicemail from Dad buried deep in my inbox. One of those that never transcribed right. I tapped to play it. His voice came through, crackly and casual. "Hey, kiddo. Just wanted to say, we've decided to use some of the retirement savings to help Romy with his creative launch. You understand, right? He needs visibility. He's got talent." He paused, like waiting for my nod. "Anyway, don't worry about it. You're doing fine." I stared at nothing. The spoon kept spinning on its own. Visibility? I needed groceries, a working laptop, a few months of rent to keep TechSense alive. But Romy needed visibility. I closed the audio. The silence afterward was louder than the message. It wasn't new. I used to think it was bad timing. But patterns tell the truth. Senior year, I had 3 college acceptance letters. I remember sitting in the living room, cat curled by the heater, clutching them like tickets to somewhere better. They barely looked. "Well," Dad said, tapping a pen on the armrest, "we'll see what's left after Romy's tuition." He was off to a performing arts school in Chicago. They paid for a 1-bedroom high-rise, a vocal coach, even leased him a car. I commuted to community college, took the 6:45 bus, ate from vending machines, worked evenings at a bookstore. When I transferred to CU Boulder, no one celebrated. They asked how I'd cover tuition, how many hours I could work. Still, I graduated magna cum laude. No one came to the ceremony. I wasn't angry, just exhausted. That kind of tired that settles into your bones and never leaves. A year later, my grandparents visited. We sat on the back porch, sweating through an Iowa summer. Mira slid an envelope toward me. "Just a little something to get you started." $2,000. I didn't spend it for months. I kept it sealed in a fireproof folder. That's what launched TechSense, my LLC, the domain, a freelance designer. Quiet money, no family conditions, no strings, unlike anything from Galen. A ping pulled me back. Mila again. This time a video, no caption. I clicked. Meet the creative genius behind TechSense. The thumbnail, Romy, in front of my old laptop, wearing my brand colors, talking like he built the whole thing. It was a clean 2-minute promo. Romy pitching his vision of emotional AI. He walked through the office I paid for, sat at my desk, the voiceover. "We believe in reshaping how humans interact with machines." We? At the end, he dropped my name. "Tam? She's great with back-end stuff. Makes the tech run like magic." Like I was some freelancer he brought in. I replayed it, twice. No, it wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Reframing, rewriting. The comments were worse. "Wow, he's brilliant. Didn't his sister start this? Or am I wrong?" No one corrected them. Not my parents, especially not them. I checked our company's pinned social post. It was the same video, shared by Dad. Proud of what Romy's building with TechSense? Something inside me cracked. I closed the laptop, sat still. I thought about deleting everything, shutting it down, but Mira's voice rose up in my head, sharp and clear. You don't walk away from what you built just because someone else's name is on the door. She was right. I opened the laptop again, hovered over the report button. Didn't click. Because maybe it was time to do more than just click. I barely slept. After closing my laptop, I paced the apartment for hours. The video looped in my mind, not the words, but the audacity. His face on my work, his voice calling it ours. Eventually, I sat down and reopened the email from the conference organizers. TechSense, Disrupting Emotional AI, featured speaker Tamara Wozniak, 2 p.m., Denver Convention Center, Main Stage B. Or at least it had said that. By the time I arrived, everything had changed. It was cool outside, but my palms were damp as I stepped through the glass doors. Inside, coffee carts, chatter, investors in clusters. I kept my badge half hidden under my jacket. At registration, the volunteer beamed. You're with TechSense? Rami already checked in. You're listed as contributor. Need help finding your lounge? Contributor. I forced a tight smile. No, I've got it. I pulled up the event app. There it was, 2 p.m., Main Stage B. Empathy in AI, a new era of expression. Speaker, Romy Dillard, Lead Communications, TechSense. My name, at the bottom like a footnote. Research contributor, T. Wozniak. I headed backstage. The media crew looked up. You the slide editor? Someone asked, holding out a tablet. Just synced Romy's changes. His what? He turned the screen. Gone was my talk on ethical data modeling. In its place, pastel slides, buzzwords, Romy's face in full-screen confidence. Title, Feeling the Future, Romy Dillard on Intuitive AI. It felt like a punch to the ribs. I stepped away and called Dad. He answered quickly. Tamara, you at the venue? What is this? I asked. Why is he giving my keynote? Dad sighed like I was overreacting. Sweetheart, don't turn this into a scene. Romy's just better at presenting. You're great with the technical stuff. This is about optics. This is my company. No, it's the family's company, he said. Let him take the spotlight. You've always handled the back end. Always. I hung up. The backstage monitor ticked down. 4 minutes to showtime. I peeked through the curtain. Romy stood center stage, mic in place, blazer sharp and loud. He looked confident, practiced. He waved to someone up front, then flashed that polished grin. The crowd loved it. I asked the stage manager for the final slide deck. He handed me a tablet. Every bullet I'd written had been gutted, swapped with Romy's pet terms. Data feels, human synergy, future presence. Even my closing line, something I'd scribbled at 3 a.m. months ago, was now under his name. When machines understand us emotionally, we understand ourselves better. He hadn't even heard it until 2 weeks ago. The MC took the stage. Please welcome Romy Dillard. The applause came like a wave. I stayed frozen. He launched into his talk with charm and swagger, tossing out buzzwords like candy. The audience laughed, clapped. He gestured to the logo behind him, my logo, and said, This journey began because I saw a need, so I built something. I felt heat behind my eyes. I built the prototype, coded every line, conducted surveys, filed paperwork, scrimped for months while Romy chased acting gigs in Chicago. Now he stood under lights I fought to reach. A man in front of me leaned over and whispered to his colleague, Visionary guy, I'm watching his stock. He's going places. His stock? His vision? I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. This wasn't oversight. This was erasure. Not quietly, not behind the scenes, right here, in public, on the stage that was supposed to be mine. The ovation when he finished was thunderous. Cameras flashed. Romy beamed. I turned away and clenched the printed schedule in my hand until the edges dug into my skin. I didn't cry, but something inside me broke, clean, sharp, and final. And one thought echoed louder than the applause. They weren't just rewriting slides, they were rewriting me. 2 mornings had passed since the Denver conference, but the sting in my chest hadn't dulled. If anything, it had sharpened. The sting had turned into a stone, something heavy and cold sitting just beneath my ribs. I had gone to sleep restless and woken up worse. I reached for my phone out of habit, not intention, and immediately regretted it. There were over a dozen new notifications, push alerts, emails, and Slack messages from our junior devs. Most were about one thing. A headline blinked at the top of my screen. Creative mind Romy Dillard pioneers emotional AI. TechSense leads a new wave. I sat up straighter, thumb frozen mid-scroll. One after another, tech media outlets had picked up the same story. Slightly altered titles, but the same angle. Same hero, same narrative. Romy. I scrolled down the first piece, looking for any mention of me. Nothing. No co-founder bio, not even a footnote in the About section. Not a single sentence acknowledged that I had conceptualized, designed, and developed every line of our core architecture. I refreshed the next article. Same result. I sat back in my chair, phone balanced on my knee, the buzzing in my ears making it hard to hear anything else. For a moment, I wondered if I'd made all of this up. If maybe I was just background noise in my own story. The woman behind the curtain never meant to take a bow. I closed the articles and opened Slack. Zara, my assistant, had sent a brief message. "Hey, I didn't authorize this. You should see where it came from. I'm checking headers now." I called her immediately. "Who sent the press kit?" She didn't even greet me, just launched into it. "Tam, it was your dad. The original blast went out from his firm's media email. That's why it bypassed our approval queue. It looks like he sent it directly to his media contacts." I stood up, walking toward the window like pacing would bring oxygen back into my lungs. "And what exactly was in it?" "A branding doc, new color specs, ones we haven't signed off on, and a paragraph listing Romy as vision director of TechSense." I almost laughed. "We don't have a vision director." Zara paused. "I know." I ended the call without saying goodbye. I needed air. I grabbed my jacket and left the building. The late morning sun was already high over Boulder's skyline, casting hard shadows that made everything look too bright, too fake. I walked a full block before stopping at a coffee shop I hadn't visited since last year. I didn't even go in. I just stood outside, staring blankly at the menu board. I didn't want caffeine. I wanted clarity, but I got neither. Instead, my phone buzzed again. A message from Toby Renner, one of our earliest investors. "Super pumped for the launch party next week. Just saw the invite. Romy hosting? Sounds slick." Attached was a screenshot of the digital invitation. Hosted by Romy Dillard. Featuring the story behind the brand special contributor, Tamara Wozniak. I froze. It felt like the ground shifted under me, but no one else noticed. The woman behind me in line kept talking about almond milk. The guy beside her asked about a gluten-free muffin. The world went on like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. The event was mine. I had planned it for months, booked the venue, curated the guest list, designed the entire program around my launch roadmap. And now I was just the special contributor? Special contributor. Like I'd wandered in off the street with a few ideas and got lucky enough to be included. I walked back to the office in a trance. I didn't hear the street noise. I didn't even remember the crosswalk. I just moved, one foot in front of the other, because if I stopped, I'd start shaking. Back inside TechSense HQ, I took the elevator up alone. When I stepped out onto our floor, I made a beeline to my office, shut the door behind me, and locked it. I called my father. He picked up, voice calm, like we were discussing dinner plans. "Hey Tamara, everything okay? You sent out a launch invite with Romy listed as host." A pause. Then, "He's the better speaker. This is about optics, not ownership." I clenched the armrest of my chair. "It's my launch." "We're not replacing you," he said, "just reframing the narrative. He's the face, you're the foundation. You didn't even ask me. You would have said no." He said it like a fact, not an accusation, like that justified every lie. "It's still your party, sweetie," he added gently, like I was a 5-year-old sulking about a balloon. "You'll be there. You'll speak. You're the brains, not the brand. Don't take it so personally." There was a long silence on my end. Too long. Then I spoke, voice low but certain. "That's not reframing, Dad. That's rewriting." Another silence. I didn't wait for his reply. I ended the call. I stared at my monitor, jaw tight. The cursor blinked on a blank document labeled launch_speech_final.docs final. What a joke. I opened it, scanned line by line. Every place Romy's name had been added, I deleted it. Every anecdote he inserted, I removed. Every moment he tried to steal, I took back. One keystroke at a time, they wanted to rewrite me. But I had the final edit. By the time Friday rolled in, the countdown felt personal. 5 days to launch. 5 days until they either heard me or tried to silence me again. My edits were done. My speech was mine. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some grip on the wheel. That illusion lasted less than 3 hours. My phone rang as I was reviewing logistics with Zara. The name flashing on the screen made my stomach dip. Lori Hampton, one of our largest early-stage investors, and a woman whose opinion could sway half a dozen others. I picked up, adjusting my voice into something polite but unreadable. "Lori, hi." She jumped in, cheerful as ever. "Tamara, I just wanted to say how thrilled I am for next week. I've been telling people about Romy nonstop. You've done such a great job backing him." "Backing him?" My pulse kicked up. "I'm sorry, what?" "The launch party," she said. "It'll be great to meet Romy in person. He seems brilliant. Natural charisma. Founder material." I stood up, pushing my chair back with a sharp scrape. "Lori, I'm hosting the event. It's my company." A pause. Soft, awkward, but unmistakably patronizing. "Oh, that's strange. The invite says he's the founder." It took everything in me not to snap. Instead, I smiled into the phone like she could hear it. "I'll have Zara follow up with the corrected version. Thanks for flagging that." When I ended the call, my hand was shaking. I stared at the screen until Zara's voice pulled me back. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not even a little." Later that afternoon, Mila stopped by the office. We hadn't seen each other in months. Old college roommate turned freelance UX designer. She was in town for a client pitch and wanted to catch up. She looked around the space, impressed. "Tam, this is wild. I mean, from your apartment floor to here? Unreal." I tried to smile. "Yeah, it's been a lot." She wandered past the whiteboards. "So, you and Romy. I didn't even know you two were working together until I saw the video. Crazy how he ended up in AI, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Well, he's the idea guy, right? You're like the operations mastermind?" That was it. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, but like a small, clean thread finally giving out after years of tension. "No, Mila," I said, voice low and even. "I'm the founder. Romy didn't build this. He didn't write one line of code. He didn't pitch investors. He didn't sit in client calls or sleep under that desk during the first 2 months." She blinked, surprised. "Oh, sorry. I guess the video made it seem—" "I know what the video made it seem like." She didn't respond, just nodded, awkward and quiet, and left a few minutes later. I walked back into my office and shut the door again. And then, I rewrote everything. I pulled up the event script and stripped it clean. No Romy, no fatherly interjections, just me, my voice, my timeline, my team. I rescheduled investor meetings and marked them as private one-on-ones. I handpicked the top 5 supporters, the ones who knew what I had built before anyone cared, and blocked an hour with each of them before the event. Then, I picked up the phone and called my mother. It went straight to voicemail. She called back 20 minutes later. I didn't wait for pleasantries. "If Dad keeps pushing this, I will go public, and this time I won't give anyone a heads up." She was silent for a beat. Then, "Tamara, do what you need to do." That answer was worse than a fight. It wasn't defiance. It was surrender. It meant she knew and chose to stay silent. After I hung up, I sent Zara the backup protocol. We had talked about this 2 months ago, half joking. Now I wasn't smiling. "Activate the contingency," I typed. "Backup domains, alternate press list, start prepping the live stream gear." She replied within 60 seconds. "Copy that. It's yours. We're ready." I exhaled, finally feeling like I wasn't alone. The sun dipped behind the mountains as I pulled into the parking lot of the launch venue for a final walkthrough. The building looked different now, less like a dream, more like a challenge. It was beautiful. Sleek industrial glass, low-lit wood accents. We'd booked it almost a year ago. Back then, it was about celebration. Now it felt like a battle line. I stood on the sidewalk and stared at the entrance for a long time. In the distance, people were laughing as they exited a nearby brewery. It reminded me of a life I used to crave. Simple. Invisible. but that version of me wouldn't have made it this far. The automatic doors whooshed open, triggered by my stillness. Inside, the space was empty, silent. I took one slow breath and whispered to myself, if they still push me aside after this, I won't be the one holding back. Evening draped itself over Boulder like a silk curtain, quiet but full of tension. I hadn't slept much the night before, and the nerves didn't ease when I arrived at the venue 3 hours early. The catering crew was setting up hors d'oeuvres near the back entrance. Zara was already inside, double-checking tech, checking off names. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Low ambient lighting, elegant floral arrangements, name tags lined up neatly in alphabetical order. Guests would walk into this event thinking they were about to witness a milestone for TechSense. They had no idea it was a battleground. I stayed in the green room for most of the hour before go time, pacing, breathing, reviewing my script again even though I knew it by heart. At exactly 6:55 p.m., the MC stepped onto the stage to a polite round of applause. His voice carried easily through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate the extraordinary rise of a company poised to reshape AI as we know it. I stood just behind the side curtain, hands clasped tightly behind my back. The MC continued, and now please welcome Galen Dillard, proud father of our visionary leader. I froze, my breath caught. Galen? I looked around the green room. No warning, no run sheet showing that name, no slide update, nothing. But there he was, already striding up the steps onto the stage like he owned it. Right behind him, Rami in a tailored navy blazer, hair gelled back, smile confident. And then Galen spoke. This is Rami's moment, his vision, his future. TechSense was just an idea once, and Rami gave it the voice and purpose it needed. We are proud, so proud to stand behind him tonight. Applause swelled. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I started walking, fast, toward the AV table when I heard something from backstage that stopped me cold. It was Dylan, our event coordinator. I hadn't noticed him on the phone. No, we're almost done finalizing the paperwork, he said. Galen already approved the transfer. Romy will get the 51%. It's clean. Trust ownership protects them from board disputes. My feet stopped moving. The noise of the room faded. They weren't just stealing my moment. They were stealing my company. Legally. I stepped into the shadows behind the stage, heart thudding so loud it drowned the crowd. Dylan looked up and saw me. His eyes widened. Tamara. I cut him off with one sentence. Not if I speak first. And I stepped out. The light hit me like a slap, but I didn't blink. I walked straight up to the podium, past Galen, past Romy, who looked stunned for the first time in years. Someone in the audience murmured. A few cameras turned toward me, unsure of what was happening. I didn't wait for permission. I took the mic. The applause had died down. Good. They'd need silence to hear this. My name is Tamara Wozniak, I said steady, and I built TechSense from the ground up. I designed every line of the original software. I pitched the first clients from my living room table. I drained my savings account to pay for version 1, and tonight you're sitting here under false pretenses, thinking you're celebrating someone else. The room hushed. Behind me, Galen took a step forward, but I turned just enough to warn him, not now. I looked out again. A sea of confused, blinking eyes. Colleagues, investors, family friends, and Romy, standing there, looking like he couldn't decide whether to smile or run. I'm not here to fight for credit. I'm not here to beg for space. I'm here because this whole circus of narrative swapping, of names moved around like chess pieces, has gone too far. I held up one of the glossy investor packets they'd passed out near the door. On the front, Romy's face, my brand. I'm not a footnote in my own company. I'm not the quiet genius behind the curtain. I'm the founder. And I won't be erased to make someone else more palatable. A heavy silence fell. You could hear the soft click of someone putting down their champagne glass. And let's be very clear, I added, my voice growing harder. No amount of title changes or family backroom deals will change who built this, or who leads it. I set the mic down, and I walked off. Behind me, no applause. But no one left either, which meant they were listening. I was halfway to the green room when Galen caught up to me. His tone was low, almost hissing. "If you embarrass this family again like that, you'll regret it." I stopped, turned. "You should have said that," I said softly, "before you tried to erase me." And I kept walking. The launch event wasn't over, not by a long shot. But the moment they tried to write me out of my own story, that's when I took the pen back. I didn't go back into the main ballroom. After the mic drop, the air outside the curtain was thick, like walking through steam. I needed oxygen. Still gripping the folded edges of my speech in one hand, I ducked into the side lounge tucked behind the cocktail bar. Dim lighting, velvet couches, the kind of space meant for donors or VIPs to decompress. Except I didn't feel like a VIP. I sat, alone, a glass of water in front of me, untouched. Somewhere behind the wall, the party resumed. Music, laughter, the pop of a champagne cork. None of it reached me. The silence in the lounge was sharper than any applause I didn't get. Romy had vanished. I hadn't seen him once since I left the stage. No apology, no attempt, not that I expected one. The door creaked open. I looked up. Galen stepped in, followed by Judith. He was fuming, his nostrils flaring the way they did when I was 13, and asked why Romy got a new iPad when I still used a hand-me-down. "You made your point," he said, voice clipped, "but don't think there won't be consequences." I leaned back, calm on the outside. "There already were. You just didn't notice them because they happened to me." He didn't flinch. "You humiliated this family tonight," he continued, stepping closer. "You made a spectacle out of your ego." "My ego? You mean the company I built?" "No, I mean your refusal to be part of the team." I laughed, quiet and bitter. "By team, you mean the people who lie, edit, and take without asking?" "I mean family." He said it like a brand, not a bond. "I've done with this," Galen snapped. "You're out of the will, out of everything. Don't expect a call. As far as I'm concerned, you're not my daughter." The room didn't spin. It didn't shake. I didn't cry, I just sat very still. Judith was next to him, silent. Her hands clutched the strap of her purse like it could anchor her to something solid. "You really mean that?" I asked him. He nodded once. Clean. Like a man checking off a task. Then another voice entered the room. Deep, slow, familiar. "You don't speak for the whole family, Galen." My grandparents stood in the doorway, Eldon in a beige sweater vest, Mira in navy with silver buttons down the front. They looked small but unshakable. Eldon stepped forward. "Then let us say this clearly in front of witnesses. We already changed the will 3 months ago. Everything we own goes to Tamara," Mira added. "Not a cent to anyone else." Galen spun toward them. "You can't do that." "We did," Eldon replied, unblinking. "After the 3rd board meeting we weren't invited to, after the interviews where Romy spoke about his vision, after Judith called us and said Tamara was overreacting again." Mira's gaze didn't waver. "We watched, we listened, and we decided." The silence was louder than any fight. Judith looked at me then, really looked. Her expression was unreadable. I didn't fill the space. I let her sit in it. "Why did you let him erase me?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "Because I didn't know how to choose," she whispered. "And because you always figured it out. You were the one who didn't need hand-holding or reassurance or help." I waited. "And I thought," she added, tears forming, "maybe you didn't need me." I stood slowly, walked closer until I was just a few feet from her. "I didn't need you to save me," I said. "I needed you to stand next to me." Judith opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing else came. The room emptied. Galen left first, shoulders rigid, jaw tight. Judith followed, pausing only once to glance back. And then it was just me, Zara, and the echo of everything that had been said. Zara walked in silently and wrapped her arms around me. No words, just warmth. Outside, the Colorado night had turned brisk. I stepped out, breathing in the crisp air that smelled faintly of pine and earth. For the first time in years, the weight on my chest didn't crush. It anchored. We walked toward the parking lot, me and the few people who hadn't turned away. Then I saw him, Romy, standing near the valet, alone. Arms crossed, face pale, eyes locked on me. His jaw twitched. He didn't say a word. I didn't either. He wanted the spotlight, but he didn't expect the firestorm. By the time I walked through my apartment door that night, my heels ached and my mind felt raw. I dropped my bag on the entry bench, peeled off my jacket, and stood there in silence, surrounded by dim lighting and the soft hum of the fridge. I didn't need to replay everything. I'd lived it. My voice, the tremor in Romy's face, the way the audience had sat still as truth cut through pretense. I showered, slept, barely, and woke just after 6 a.m. to the buzz of my phone. 32 new emails. Most subject lines blurred together until one stopped me. Bradshaw Capital. Ultimatum enclosed. My breath stalled. I opened it. The message was short, precise. Per recent public clarity and performance, we require the immediate removal of Romy Dillard as a public-facing representative of TechSense. Should this not occur, Bradshaw Capital will suspend funding effective immediately. No hedging, no perhaps or discussion points. They weren't asking. They were drawing a line. I set the phone down slowly. The quiet of my kitchen felt like armor. 2 hours later, I walked into the TechSense boardroom in downtown Boulder. Polished glass, cool morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Zara had already set out the presentation packets and coffee. She nodded at me once, confident, assured. Across the table, the board, 4 voting members. Romy, seated at the far end, looked like he hadn't slept, his face blotchy, eyes glassy, no sign of Galen. Judith sat beside Romy, lips pursed, hands folded tightly on her lap. I stood at the head of the table, no PowerPoint, just words. "Thank you for being here," I began. "I'll be brief." I laid out the facts, the false narrative, the unauthorized press releases, the attempted power shift via trust documents. I placed a copy of the Bradshaw email in front of each board member. Then I looked them straight in the eye. You cannot build trust on illusion, and I won't let mine be traded for appearances. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound was the clock ticking. Then Board Chair Marla Sandin nodded once and said, "Motion to re-establish Tamara Wozniak as sole public and legal representative of TechSense, effective immediately." "Seconded," came another voice. "Approved," said the third. Unanimous. I sat down as the resolution was finalized. Romy didn't speak. His shoulders sagged. Judith leaned over and whispered something I couldn't hear. He didn't look up. By that afternoon, the TechSense media team had already issued the correction. Statement from founder and CEO Tamara Wozniak. It hit every major tech outlet by the evening. Forbes, TechCrunch, local stations. I didn't gloat. Instead, I answered only one interview request from a quiet podcast that championed women in leadership. I think, I told them, when people try to rewrite you out of your own story, you don't scream louder. You write clearer. Within 48 hours, Romy deleted his Twitter, then Instagram, then LinkedIn, one by one, like he was scrubbing away evidence of someone he didn't want to be anymore. Late that night, my phone lit up. Judith. I stared at the screen. I answered. There was a long pause before she spoke. "Will you come by the house sometime?" Her voice was thin. Not weak, but like someone trying to reach across a distance they'd created. I leaned against the kitchen counter. "Maybe," I said, "but not now." A soft exhale came through the line. She didn't argue. The next ping was a text from Mira. "You did it, baby, and you did it with grace." No lecture, no instructions, just love in the quietest way that mattered. I sat at my desk around 10 p.m., alone in the warm glow of my office lamp. The launch party was over. The fallout was settling. But I wasn't empty. In front of me, my laptop blinked. A new file. next_chapter_idea.docs. I hovered my fingers over the keyboard. Outside, the night air curled against the window. But inside, it felt steady. I whispered to the stillness. I didn't burn bridges. I built one, far away from them. The morning light had a different kind of warmth now, not softer exactly, just less sharp around the edges. It had been almost a month since the launch party, since the mic, the fallout, and the fractured parts of my life being laid bare under stage lights. These days, I started mornings in a co-working space across town. It wasn't glamorous, two tall plants, humming Wi-Fi, a coffee machine that sputtered more than brewed. But it was mine. My mornings had become a ritual. I brewed peppermint tea instead of drowning in caffeine. I sat by the window, notebook open, even if the words didn't come easily. That morning I scribbled just one line. Closure doesn't mean agreement. It means I stopped bleeding. That was enough. I hadn't returned to the TechSense main office yet, not because I was afraid, but because I was busy building the version of leadership I wanted to live by. Quiet, honest, unbending. Every Sunday, I drove across town to my grandparents' place. Mira's front garden always had something blooming, no matter the season. Eldon always wore the same sweater, no matter the weather. We didn't talk about the party anymore, or Romy, or my parents. Instead, it was tomatoes and taxes, the dogwood tree out front, his old car that he swore still ran better than anything off a lot today. One afternoon after we finished lunch and Mira handed me a fresh jar of plum jam, she said, "You know, we didn't leave you the estate because of money." I looked up, surprised. She smiled, folding a napkin. "We did it because you chose dignity when you had every reason not to." I didn't say anything. I just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Judith hadn't called since the night of the board meeting. Galen hadn't either. But I heard things. A former family friend mentioned Galen was skipping social events, didn't show at the regional gala, hadn't renewed his membership at the golf club. And Romy? He launched a podcast, then a YouTube channel. I watched one episode. The views were low, the comments were worse. He'd deleted the channel by week 3. And strangely, I didn't feel vindicated. No pride, no satisfaction. Just a sense of distance, like watching someone else's story through glass. Then one morning, my phone buzzed. Judith. Her name blinked up from an unsaved number. The message was short. "I still don't know how to be a mother to you, but I hope someday I can try." I reread it twice. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. A few weeks later, on a bright Saturday, I found myself wandering Pearl Street. The street performers were out, a violinist playing near the ice cream stand. The breeze carried the smell of coffee and something grilled. I was halfway through the block when a woman stopped me. "You're her, right?" she said, eyes lighting up. "From that AI event, the one who spoke up." I paused. "Yeah, that was me." She smiled wide. "That was brave. It meant something." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. She walked away, and I stood there, not proud, just present, whole. Back home, I opened my laptop. A blank document stared back at me. New_project_outline.docs. This one wouldn't be built on reaction. It wouldn't be about proving anything. This one was just mine. I leaned back, stretching as the light shifted across the floor. My reflection in the dark screen wasn't someone waiting for permission anymore. I had been erased, yes, but I rewrote myself. And the new version? She was quieter, stronger, still scarred, but no longer wounded. I closed the laptop and said it out loud, just once. I used to think family defined me. Now I know. I get to decide what defines me. And now that you've heard my story, from silence to speaking up, from being erased to rewriting myself, let me leave you with this. I used to think loyalty meant staying quiet, that family meant sacrificing your truth, that being strong meant not rocking the boat. But strength, real strength, is knowing when to draw a line and say, "This ends with me." If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own home, if you've ever watched your hard work become someone else's spotlight, if you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, even when it cost you your voice, then please hear me now. You are not selfish for wanting credit. You are not dramatic for needing boundaries, and you are never wrong for reclaiming your story, especially when others tried to write you out of it. This isn't just about business. It's about self-worth. It's about learning that your value isn't up for debate. Not by family, not by culture, not by silence. And maybe that's the hardest lesson of all. You don't need their permission to live fully. You just need your own. So let me ask you, have you ever been in Tamara's shoes? What would you have done at that launch party? Or better yet, what would your message be to someone still stuck in that silence? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home for you. Tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know what part of the world or the US you're in. And if this wasn't your kind of story, that's okay too. Let me know what you think and what kinds of truths you're living through. And hey, if stories like this speak to you, if they help you feel seen or understood, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Because your voice deserves a space too. Thanks for listening.
Sometimes, even small things can change your life completely. That's exactly what happened to me, Maria, just 5 weeks before my engagement party. I'm 34 years old and was so excited to marry Matthew, my boyfriend of 6 years. We had been planning our engagement party for months, making sure every little detail was perfect. Everything seemed to be going great until I got a call from my mom. "Maria, cancel the engagement party," she said firmly. I was so shocked I almost dropped the phone.
What?
"Mom, are you serious?" I asked, hoping she was joking. But she wasn't. "No joke," she replied calmly. "Joyce just got a promotion, and we're celebrating it on the same day as your engagement party. My younger sister Joyce, who is 5 years younger than me, has always been my parents' favorite. I got used to it over the years, but this felt like a new level of unfairness. This was my engagement party, something I'd been excited about for so long, and they wanted me to cancel it for Joyce's work promotion. "Mom, come on," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've been planning this for ages. I'm not canceling it just because Joyce got a promotion." "Don't be selfish, Maria," she snapped. "This is a big moment for your sister. The same guests are invited. It's just a different party. Just reschedule yours." I felt my anger rising. "No way, Mom. This is my engagement party. I'm not canceling it, and that's final."
She didn't take it well.
She started yelling so loudly that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I couldn't take it anymore and hung up on her. As I sat there staring at my phone, memories from my childhood came flooding back. It had always been like this. Joyce was always the priority, and I came second. I remembered my 21st birthday. My parents completely forgot about it until my grandma called to wish me a happy birthday. They scrambled to throw something together with a store-bought cake and a gift card. It felt so pathetic, especially compared to the 6-day celebration they had planned for Joyce's 18th birthday just months earlier. Just then, Matthew walked in. He took one look at me and could tell something was wrong. "Maria, what's going on?" he asked, sitting down next to me. I told Matthew everything. About my mom's call, her demands, and all the memories it brought back. He listened carefully, his face getting more serious with each word. "That's ridiculous," he said when I finished. "We're not canceling anything." I nodded, feeling so thankful for his support. "I know, but why can't they put me first for once?" I asked, my frustration spilling out. "Because they're clueless," Matthew replied firmly. "But I put you first. Always." I looked at him and managed a small smile. "I know. That's why I'm marrying you." We spent the rest of the night finalizing plans for the party, making sure everything was perfect. As I drifted off to sleep, I tried to push thoughts of my family out of my mind. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it. The next morning, I woke up ready to focus on the party. There was so much to do: send invitations, finish decorations, and sort out catering. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my cousin AB. "Hey Maria, is everything okay with you and Matthew? I heard you guys broke up." I stared at the screen, completely confused. Where did that come from? I quickly replied,
What?
"No way.
We're fine.
Who told you that?" She replied almost immediately, "Your mom." Aunt Carol said. She told her the engagement was off. My stomach dropped. I called AB right away, my heart racing. "What's going on?" I asked as soon as she answered. "I don't know, Maria," she said. "Aunt Carol called last night and said your mom told her you and Matthew had a big fight and broke up. She also said we should go to Joyce's promotion party instead." It felt like a punch to the gut. "That's not true, AB. We're still engaged and the party is still on. My mom wanted me to cancel for Joyce's thing, but I refused." There was a pause. "Oh no, Maria. I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I spent the next hour on the phone with AB, trying to fix the mess. My mom had gone behind my back and called everyone on the guest list. She told them the engagement party was canceled, made up a story about Matthew and me having a huge fight, and told them to attend Joyce's promotion party instead. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm.
I'm going to fix this mess, I said.
Can you help spread the word that the engagement party is still happening? I asked Abby, hoping she'd support me. Of course, she replied right away. I'll start calling people now. After hanging up, I sat on the couch, trying to process everything. My own mom had tried to ruin my engagement party. It was hard to believe. When Matthew came home from work about an hour later, he took one look at me and knew something was wrong. I told him everything about Mom's calls, the lies, and how she redirected everyone to Joyce's party. As I spoke, I could see anger building in his eyes. That's it, he said, clearly upset. We're cutting them off, your parents, Joyce, everyone. I knew he was right, but the idea of cutting off my family scared me. No matter how badly they treated me, they were still my family. Let's focus on fixing this first, I suggested. We need to let everyone know the engagement party is still on. Matthew nodded, determined.
Okay.
Where do we start? We spent the rest of the night fixing the mess, sending emails, making phone calls, and posting on social media. I wrote a long message explaining the situation and sent it to everyone on the guest list. It was exhausting and embarrassing, having to tell people over and over again that no, Matthew and I hadn't broken up, and yes, the engagement party was still happening. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. My voice was hoarse from talking so much, and my eyes were burning from staring at screens for hours. We did it, Matthew said, pulling me into a hug. It's going to be okay. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. My mom's betrayal had opened up old wounds, memories of being overlooked, of Joyce always being the favorite. It all came rushing back. The next day, I decided to visit my Aunt Kelly, my dad's sister. She had always been kind to me, and I thought it might help to invite her to the engagement party in person and clear up any confusion about the drama. When I got to her house, I heard voices coming from the living room. I was about to call out a greeting when I heard something that made me stop in my tracks. I can't believe Maria would do something like this, Aunt Kelly was saying. Canceling her own engagement party just to spite her sister. So childish. My heart sank. Another lie, this time spread by my own family to cover up the first one. I was about to step in and defend myself when I heard another voice join in. I know, right? Poor Joyce must be so upset, the voice said. She worked so hard for that promotion, and now Maria's trying to ruin it for her. I recognized the voice. It was my cousin Melissa. I'd always thought we were close, but here she was, gossiping about me behind my back. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped into the room, startling both of them. Is that really what you think of me? I asked, my voice icy. They both jumped like they'd seen a ghost. Aunt Kelly quickly recovered, putting on a fake smile. Maria, sweetie, we didn't hear you come in. Obviously, I replied, keeping my tone cold. I came to invite you to my engagement party, but it sounds like you've already decided what kind of person I am. Melissa at least looked embarrassed. Maria, we didn't mean. Save it, I interrupted. I want to know exactly what Mom told you. For the next hour, I listened as they explained the twisted story Mom had told them. According to her, I'd thrown a fit when I heard about Joyce's promotion and demanded she reschedule her celebration. When Joyce refused, I supposedly canceled my engagement party out of spite, saying I'd rather not get married at all than share the spotlight with her. It was another lie, crafted to make me look like the villain. By the time they finished, I was shaking with anger. None of that is true, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Mom called me and demanded I cancel my party so they could celebrate Joyce's promotion. When I said no, she went behind my back and told everyone the engagement was off. I didn't do any of this out of spite. My own mother is sabotaging my engagement. Aunt Kelly and Melissa exchanged guilty looks, realizing they had believed Mom's lies without even asking me for my side of the story. I'm sorry, Maria, Aunt Kelly said, looking genuinely regretful. We should have come to you first. I just nodded, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. Please help me spread the word, I said quietly. I didn't want anyone else believing Mom's lies. As I left Aunt Kelly's house, I felt a little better, but I knew this wasn't over. Mom's actions had made one thing clear: she would always put Joyce first, even if it meant ruining one of the most important moments of my life. With Matthew by my side, I knew I could handle this, but my relationship with my family? That would never be the same. Later, when I saw Mom's name flash on my phone screen, anxiety washed over me. After everything that had happened, I had no idea what she would say or how I would respond. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Maria, I just heard about the party," she began, her tone a mix of guilt and irritation. "I can't believe you went through with it after everything. You could have at least tried to compromise with your family." I felt frustration bubbling up, but I stayed calm. "Mom, this was my engagement party," I said. "Matthew and I spent months planning it. It's not fair to expect me to cancel just because Joyce got a promotion." She was quiet for a moment. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she understood. But then she sighed. "Well, I hope you know how hurt your sister feels. She thought you'd support her big day." I couldn't believe it. Even after everything, she was still making it about Joyce. "Mom," I said firmly, "this was my engagement party, a once-in-a-lifetime event for me. I'm happy for Joyce, but you can't expect me to give up everything just to make her happy." She started to say something, but I'd had enough. "Look, I don't want to argue anymore," I said gently but firmly. "You and Dad made your choice, and I made mine. If you can't be happy for me, that's on you. I need to focus on my own happiness now." With that, I ended the call. I felt relieved and, surprisingly, empowered. For the first time, I had stood up to Mom without backing down or apologizing. It felt good, freeing even. Matthew, who had overheard the conversation, wrapped his arm around me. "I'm proud of you," he said, giving me a reassuring hug. "You deserve to be happy, and you did the right thing." In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about how amazing our engagement party had been, despite the drama. The room had been full of people who truly cared about us. The laughter, the love, and even Grandma's unforgettable dance moves made it a night I would never forget. And the best part? For the first time, I didn't feel weighed down by my family's opinions or expectations. I finally felt free to focus on the future I was building with Matthew, a future where I could create my own happiness, surround myself with people who truly supported me, and let go of the toxic family patterns that had held me back for so long. From that day forward, I promised to put my happiness first and stop letting others decide my worth. I decided to stop seeking approval from people who couldn't appreciate me and instead embrace the love and support of those who truly cared. Our engagement party had been more than just a celebration of our upcoming marriage. It marked the start of a new chapter, a life filled with joy, self-respect, and people who had my back. Hearing Joyce's bitter words, I felt a mix of guilt and frustration. I had come hoping to make peace, but it was clear she wasn't ready. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I was doing this for Grandma and the small chance of mending things. "Joyce, I didn't come here to upset you," I said gently. "I came because I want us to move past this. My engagement party was something I'd been planning for months, and I know the timing wasn't ideal, but I don't want us to keep hurting each other over this." She crossed her arms, her face hard. "You keep saying that, but actions speak louder than words, Maria. Everyone went to your party. My event was supposed to be important too, but you didn't care. You overshadowed it without a second thought." I felt my patience slipping. "Joyce, I didn't overshadow anything on purpose. You planned your party last minute, knowing it was the same day as my engagement. That wasn't my choice." Before I could say more, Mom cut in, her voice sharp. "Enough, Maria. You're always making excuses. Family should come first. If you can't understand that, maybe you don't belong here." Her words hit like a punch. I felt a painful lump in my throat. "So family only matters when it's convenient for you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I've spent my whole life being pushed aside for Joyce. And now, I'm supposed to feel guilty for celebrating one of the happiest moments of my life." I turned to Dad, hoping for support, but He stood silently in the corner, avoiding my gaze. It was clear he wouldn't stand up for me. "Fine," I said, swallowing the hurt. "If that's how you feel, then maybe I don't belong here," I said, my voice shaking. I turned to leave but stopped, feeling years of disappointment and hurt rise to the surface. I faced Joyce and my parents one last time. "I've done everything I could to make you all happy, to fit in, and to be a good daughter and sister. But no matter what I do, it's never enough. So I'm done trying. From now on, I'm going to put myself first." Without another word, I walked out of the house. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Later that evening, I called Grandma and told her what had happened. She listened quietly, letting me pour out all my emotions. "Oh, Maria," she said gently, her voice warm and understanding. "I know you've done your best. But sometimes people are too stuck in their own ways to see beyond their expectations. Remember, you deserve to be happy too, and there are people who love you just the way you are." Hearing those words, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't need my parents' or Joyce's approval to live my life. I had Matthew, who loved me unconditionally, and I had Grandma, who had always been my rock. In the days that followed, I decided to focus on the future I was building with Matthew. I surrounded myself with people who truly supported me. I realized I didn't need to keep sacrificing my happiness to earn love that should have been freely given. The experience was painful, but it taught me something important. I was worthy of love and respect just as I was. I was ready to live a life where my happiness came first. Eventually, Joyce's bitterness caught up with her. She had been so focused on trying to ruin my life that her work started to suffer. Her colleagues noticed how distracted she was, always gossiping or glued to her phone instead of working. It wasn't long before her bosses started paying attention. One afternoon, I got an unexpected call from my cousin, AB. She had helped me clear up the rumors at the engagement party, and now she sounded almost excited. "Maria, you're not going to believe this," she said. "Joyce's been put on probation at work." I heard from one of Joyce's coworkers that her behavior had gotten so out of control, they had no choice but to put her on probation. I felt a mix of emotions, relief, satisfaction, but mostly sadness. Joyce's obsession with tearing me down had ended up hurting her own career. It felt like such a waste. Over the next few weeks, I focused on moving forward with my life and my future with Matthew. He had been my rock through everything, and his family had become my real support system. Matthew's mom even invited me over for a girls' day, making it clear how much they welcomed me into their family. As I started building a happier life without the toxic weight of my parents and Joyce, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known before. One evening, as I scrolled through my messages, I noticed a text from Grandma. "Maria, I just want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm always here for you. Family should support one another, and you have my full love and backing. Matthew is your family now, and I'm proud of you for choosing happiness. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty." Reading her words, I felt a sense of closure. I didn't need my parents' approval or Joyce's acceptance to feel whole. I had people in my life who valued, respected, and loved me just as I was. And with that, I let go of the pain and resentment that had weighed me down for so long. I was free, finally stepping into a future surrounded by people who truly cared about me. I had found my real family, Matthew, his parents, and Grandma, and that was all I needed to feel loved and whole. Hearing about Joyce's demotion felt almost surreal. The very promotion that had caused so much drama was now gone. People at her office were whispering about the irony of it all. Her efforts to ruin my happiness had backfired. For the first time in months, I felt calm and at peace. With all the tension behind me, I could fully focus on planning my wedding. Matthew and I chose a beautiful outdoor venue, a fairy tale garden with a charming gazebo, perfect for exchanging our vows. As we stood together in the garden, imagining our big day, Matthew gently squeezed my hand. "Are you happy?" he asked, looking at me with his warm, familiar smile. "Happier than I've ever been," I replied, and I meant every word. Next came the excitement of choosing our wedding party. I asked my closest friends, the ones who had supported me through all the hard times, to be my bridesmaids. Each of them said yes, and their support made me feel even happier. Next came the guest list. I sat at the dining table, writing names on envelopes for all the friends and relatives who had stood by us. With every name, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. These were the people who showed me love and kindness, the true meaning of family. But when I got to the bottom of the list, I stopped. There were 5 names left: Mom, Dad, and Joyce. I stared at the blank spaces, feeling a mix of emotions. Matthew walked in and saw me sitting there, lost in thought. "Are you okay?" he asked, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. I looked up at him, tears in my eyes. "I don't think I can invite them, Matthew. Not after everything that's happened." He nodded, his face full of understanding. "It's your decision, Maria. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you." Taking a deep breath, I set the pen down. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "They don't deserve to be there. This day is about celebrating love and support, and that's not something they've ever shown me." As soon as I made that choice, I felt a huge sense of relief. This wedding was the start of a new chapter, surrounded by people who truly cared about us. With Matthew by my side, I knew I was making the right decision. It was bittersweet, but the peace I felt told me it was the right path forward. The weeks flew by, and before I knew it, our wedding day had arrived. Standing in front of the mirror in my bridal suite, adjusting my veil, I felt a calmness I hadn't experienced in years. When I walked down the aisle toward Matthew, I saw the faces of the people who had supported us. Matthew's parents were beaming with pride. My grandma dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Our friends and family, who had stood by us through all the drama, smiled warmly. These were my people, the ones who had shown me what real love and support looked like. When I reached Matthew, he took my hands in his eyes full of love. As we said our vows, a deep sense of belonging filled me. This was my true family, not just connected by blood, but by love, respect, and acceptance. At the reception, surrounded by laughter and joy, I knew this was the life I had been waiting for. I realized something important. Our engagement party months ago had been more than just a celebration of our marriage. It had marked the start of my new life. A life where I wasn't an outsider anymore, but someone who could create her own happiness. As Matthew and I shared our first dance as husband and wife, I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling truly at peace. The journey had been hard, but it had brought me here, to a place of strength, understanding, and real happiness. "I love you," Matthew whispered in my ear. "I love you too," I replied, my heart full of emotion. In that moment, I knew that whatever challenges came our way, we would face them together. For the first time, I wasn't scared of the future. I was excited to dive into it headfirst with Matthew by my side. This was my fresh start, my chance to build a life full of love and happiness. And I was ready. My name is Victoria, and I'm a 37-year-old woman living with my mother in my parent house. My life hasn't turned out quite the way I imagined, but I am proud of the choices I've made, especially when it comes to taking care of my mom. 5 years ago, my mother went through a serious health crisis and had to have heart surgery. There was even a time when we were told to prepare for the worst, but thankfully she pulled through. She's had a remarkable recovery and is still with us today. She visits the hospital every 3 weeks for checkups and takes her medication daily, which helps her stay healthy. She's also committed to exercising, which has made a huge difference. Since her illness, I've dedicated myself to helping her live a comfortable and happy life. I work full-time and life is busy, but I still look forward to weekends when we can spend time together. One of our favorite things to do is try out new cafes nearby. Just last week, I heard about a place that serves a special strawberry parfait, and I suggested we go check it out this weekend. "Mom, how about a trip to the new cafe this Sunday? They have a strawberry parfait I think you'd love." She smiled and agreed. "That sounds delicious, Victoria. I'm looking forward to it." Moments like these make all the hard work worthwhile. My mother and I both cherish our little outings, which give us something to look forward to amidst our busy schedules. It's these small joys that help us both keep going. However, things aren't easy at home, especially with my family situation. After my father passed away, my brother and his wife treated me poorly. They see me as a burden for still living at home, but I stay because I want to be there for my mother. My brother, who believes he's the rightful heir to manage our family's company, shouted at me to leave the house. His wife even threw water at me and laughed, mocking me for being dependent on my mother. They don't understand my situation or respect my role as my mother's caregiver. I won't tolerate being treated this way any longer. I've decided to cut ties with them completely and will take any steps necessary to defend myself and my mother. Even though my life has had its ups and downs, I'm proud to support my mother and lead an independent life, even if it looks different from what others expect. I may not have married or started a family of my own as I once dreamed, but I am strong, and I find joy and purpose in caring for my mom and building a life that suits us both. I've put a lot of effort into supporting my mother's treatment and helping her stay healthy. Most of the time, she has to be careful about her diet and follow specific restrictions. However, once a month, her doctor gives her permission to eat whatever she likes, and we both look forward to this special day. It's our chance to go out and enjoy a nice meal together, and she truly loves this little treat. You might think it's unusual for a 37-year-old to still be living at home and going on outings with her mother, but these moments are precious to me, and they make me happy. My father is not very talkative, but he enjoys listening to our conversations. He often tells us, "Listening to you two feels like watching a comedy show." My mom and I just laugh, saying, "We're just having some girl talks." My father works hard running his own company, so he comes home tired each evening. His routine is simple. He likes to sit on the living room sofa, relax with a beer, and watch TV. Over the years, he's handed some responsibilities over to his employees, so his work isn't as physically demanding as it used to be, but he still puts in a lot of effort. I admire my father for working so hard for our family every day. Recently, I've noticed he's been having days where he doesn't feel well, and given his age, it wouldn't be surprising if he started thinking about who should take over the company. One day, I asked him, "Dad, are you thinking of letting Dylan take over the company? You seem really tired lately." My father looked serious and replied, "I would never hand it over to Dylan. I'd rather give it to someone else than let him run it." My older brother, Dylan, is 3 years older than me, and while I thought he'd eventually take over, my father feels differently. They have a tense relationship, and it's been that way since my brother became an adult. My father believes that if Dylan managed the company, it would go downhill fast. He doesn't just lack business sense, he's also careless with money, my dad said, clearly frustrated. Curious about their strained relationship, I once asked my mother about it. She explained that during Dylan's college years, he had some serious financial issues. At that time, our family's finances were tight, and the company was just starting to grow. It seems my brother made some unwise decisions that still bother my father to this day. Though I don't know all the details, I understand my father's concerns. It's tough watching him struggle with the idea of letting go of his company, but I trust he'll make the right decision when the time comes. I decided to go to a less expensive public high school to help ease the financial burden on our family. Meanwhile, my older brother, Dylan, attended a private school, which was much more costly. He didn't work part-time like I did to help out. Instead, he spent his time having fun, without much responsibility. Even as an adult, my father asked Dylan multiple times to help with the family business, hoping he would take some interest. But Dylan always refused, saying, "Why should I help out with a failing company? You started it, so deal with it yourself." Dylan didn't just refuse to help. He even used the company's money for his nightlife and personal expenses, and eventually, he became hard to control. My parents tried to hide this from me, but over time, it was clear that they were struggling with Dylan's actions. My mother once shared, "I don't understand why Dylan turned out so selfish. We raised both of you the same way, and we didn't spoil him in particular." She looked sad as she spoke, and I could tell it hurt her deeply. Dylan, now 40, has recently announced he's getting married to his girlfriend, who is 6 years younger than him. They've been together for a while, and just last week, he called me to let me know he planned to bring her over to introduce her to the family. But instead of calling our parents directly, he called me. Next week, I'm bringing my girlfriend over to meet everyone. It's a serious visit, so the house should be clean. Make sure Dad and Mom know we're coming, and tell them to tidy up, he said bluntly. I was surprised he didn't want to speak to our parents directly. Why are you telling me this? Why don't you talk to them yourselves? I asked, but he ignored my question. Despite feeling frustrated, I told my parents to avoid the surprise of an unexpected visit. Dylan is coming next weekend with his girlfriend for a marriage greeting, I told them. He could have said it himself instead of asking me, but he hasn't changed a bit. My parents sighed, and there was a long silence. Despite everything, they hoped that if the marriage went well, Dylan might visit less often and spend less money. Let's prepare for this meeting as if it were the last, my father said firmly. When the weekend came, Dylan arrived with his fiancée. He walked in and said casually, "It's been a while. Sorry I couldn't get in touch sooner." My parents and I welcomed them, trying to make the best of the situation, even though Dylan's attitude hadn't changed. "Victoria probably told you, but I'm getting married to my girlfriend," Dylan said casually. Then his fiancée, Joanna, introduced herself. "Nice to meet you, I'm Joanna. Please remember me," she said, looking smug. She was dressed in a short skirt with heavy makeup, and her attitude felt anything but respectful. Her smirk and the way she carried herself didn't seem appropriate for a first-time greeting, especially for a marriage introduction. My family was shocked, but Dylan didn't seem bothered. It was almost as if he found her attitude normal. To break the tension, my mother asked politely, "Joanna, do you work somewhere?" Joanna looked annoyed and replied, "Work? No, I'm not working right now." "Is that a problem?" Then she added, "I plan to be a housewife. I have no intention of working after marriage, and I definitely won't be helping out with your family business." No one had even mentioned our father's company, yet Joanna threw this comment in as if she was trying to pick a fight. Her words made my parents and me uncomfortable, but we decided to stay calm and let it go. After Dylan and Joanna left, we had a long conversation about it. What was she thinking, acting like that? She talked as if our family business meant nothing, my father said angrily. What does he see in someone so rude and full of herself? Are people like that these days? My mother added, sounding upset. No, Mom. Not everyone is like that, I replied, trying to reassure her. That evening, Dylan and Joanna were the only topic of conversation at our dinner table. We all agreed it would be best to keep some distance from Dylan and his future wife. 10 days later, Dylan called me again. "We're moving forward with the marriage. We'll register it soon and plan the wedding ceremony later. Make sure to tell Dad and Mom to prepare a wedding gift. And since you're working, I'm counting on you to give a decent gift, too," he said, almost as if it was my responsibility. To avoid any complaints, I gave Dylan a generous gift. Later, Joanna called to thank me, but I could hear her chewing on food during the call. "Thanks for the gift money," she said. "I thought your father's company was struggling, so I'm lucky to get anything at all." "What? Struggling?" I asked, shocked. "My father's company isn't huge, but it's stable with around 50 employees, and there's no financial trouble." Her comment showed how little she knew or cared about her family. It left me even more certain that keeping our distance from them was the best choice. When I questioned Joanna about her rude comments, she just laughed mockingly. Feeling upset and hurt, I quickly ended the call. Her words, which seemed to insult my father, left me feeling sad and angry. Then, about a month later, something unexpected happened in our family. I had taken a day off work to accompany my mom to her regular hospital checkup. That morning, our home phone, rarely used and nearly forgotten, suddenly rang. We had even thought about canceling our landline service, so hearing it ring caught me off guard. I picked it up, and it was one of my father's employees on the line. I could hear panic in his trembling voice. "Something terrible has happened." The president suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. "We called an ambulance, and he's being taken to the hospital. Could you please come right away?" he said. My mother, who was getting ready for her checkup, saw the look on my face, and immediately knew something was wrong. "Victoria, what happened? Is everything okay?" "Dad collapsed and has been taken to the hospital by ambulance." "We need to hurry, Mom." Without wasting any time, we grabbed a taxi and headed to the hospital. During the ride, we both felt a heavy sense of worry, but kept praying for my dad's safety. Once we arrived, we rushed to the reception, gave my father's name, and were directed to the emergency department. A nurse with a serious expression came over and guided us to a room. With trembling hands, I opened the door and saw my father lying on the bed. He was gone. My mother and I stood there in shock, unable to speak, as the doctor gently explained what had happened. When the ambulance arrived, he was already in cardiac arrest. We tried everything we could to revive him, but he never regained consciousness. "I'm very sorry," he said. My father had suffered an acute heart attack, and despite all their efforts, they couldn't save him. The suddenness of it was hard to accept. But seeing his calm and peaceful expression, I felt a small bit of relief, thinking he might finally be at rest after working so hard for us all his life. I had informed my brother, Dylan, about what happened while we were on our way to the hospital. His response, however, was cold. "I'm at work and can't just leave like you can. It's probably nothing serious, so don't make such a big deal out of it," he said before hanging up abruptly. Even after losing our father, Dylan's behavior showed no change. His lack of concern felt like yet another blow, but at that moment, all I could focus on was my mother and dealing with our grief. When I told Dylan about our father's passing, his reply was heartless. "I see. Well, I guess it was just his time. Better that than him becoming an old burden," he said. I was shocked. How could he be so cold? While my mother and I were deeply grieving, his words made me feel disgusted with him. Still, even in our sadness, life didn't pause for us. We had to make the funeral arrangements and deal with everything that comes after. As we prepared for the funeral, I started to think about my father's company. What will happen to the company? There are employees who depend on it, I whispered to myself. Hearing this, my mother took out a thick notebook. "This is your father's guide for running the business. He worked on this for years, putting in all his knowledge and experience. If you're willing, Victoria, he wanted you to take over." "What do you think?" she asked. The notebook was packed with my father's insights and strategies for the company. Holding it, I felt his presence and dedication. Even though I was still grieving, I knew that after the funeral, I'd have to step up. "I'll do it, Mom. I'll try my best," I said, feeling a sense of duty. Deep down, I had always thought that one day I might need to take over the family business. The day of the funeral came quickly, and to my shock, Dylan and his wife showed no respect for the occasion. During the service, they made a completely inappropriate statement. "Victoria, how long do you plan to keep living off our parents and staying in this house?" Dylan sneered. "What are you talking about?" I asked, completely confused as to why they would bring this up during the funeral. "You're just a freeloader here," he continued, "as the eldest son. I'm taking over the company. You need to pack your things and get out of here. You're too old to be living off Mom. Get a life and be independent." His wife then picked up a glass of water and threw it in my face, laughing loudly. I was humiliated and furious. This was too much. There was no reason for them to treat me this way, especially at such a sensitive time. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I decided right then that I would cut ties with Dylan and his wife. I couldn't let this disrespect continue. "Fine, I'll leave this house," I said, determined to move forward on my own terms. I knew I would take on my father's legacy and prove that I didn't need them. When I told Dylan and his wife that I would be moving out, they looked almost too happy about it. "Great. Now the company and the house will be ours," Dylan said, smiling. "And with Mom living with us, we can take care of her pension too." "That's right, Dylan. You'll be the president, and I'll be the president's wife. We'll be rich," his wife added with excitement. I watched them talk about their future, feeling disgusted. But I decided not to tell them that my father had actually chosen me to take over the company. I kept quiet, thinking it would be best to reveal the truth after the funeral. Pretending to be upset, I packed my bags and left as they had demanded. At the funeral, Dylan couldn't resist showing off. He spoke to my father's employees and said, "From now on, as the eldest son, I'll be taking over the company. I hope you'll support me." He ignored the sad atmosphere and made it all about himself. My mother, seeing this, sighed in disappointment. She could hardly believe his lack of respect. Dylan and his wife had no idea what was actually happening. After the funeral, I had to handle a lot of tasks related to the company, so I stayed busy. During this time, I noticed my phone had over 100 missed calls and messages from Dylan. I finally decided to answer the next call. "What did you do?" Dylan yelled. "I went to Dad's company, and they told me that his daughter is the next president. I quit my job thinking I would take over. How could you keep this from me?" His words were jumbled, and he sounded shocked and angry. He had confidently gone to the company to introduce himself as the new president, only to be told he wasn't in charge. The employees apparently weren't welcoming him, and he was furious. "Dad would never leave the company to someone like you, who only thinks about himself," I replied calmly. "And I heard you and your wife have big gambling debts. That's no secret." Dylan was stunned.
What? How do you know that?
"I never told anyone. When I left my previous job to take over my father's company, a former boss had advised me, when you have family involved, especially one with money troubles, it's wise to check their background." Taking his advice, I had done some digging and learned that Dylan and his wife were indeed deep in gambling debts. It was clear that my father's choice to leave the company to me had been the right one. Dylan's actions showed he only cared about himself, and I was determined to protect what my father had built. "I had you and your wife investigated," I said firmly. "How are you planning to pay off those huge debts? Were you hoping to use Dad's money? Is that why you wanted to kick me out and move back home? That's incredibly selfish." Dylan was stunned and speechless. His debts, along with his wife's, had grown to an enormous amount. But I was determined that they wouldn't touch a penny of what Dad left behind. Dad's last wish was for me to take over the company, and soon the lawyer would confirm it through his will. I told Dylan, "The will is already set, and you won't be receiving any money."
What?
"That's a lie." Dylan's panic came through the phone. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Then, his wife grabbed the phone and started yelling at me. "How could you be so heartless? Your brother is suffering, and as his sister, you should help him. You're the worst." I could have argued back, but it didn't seem worth it. Calmly, I replied, "You made those debts. They are not my responsibility or Mom's. Please don't contact us again. Your choices now are to work hard to pay off your debt or declare bankruptcy. Good luck." Before I could hear more of her yelling, I ended the call. Now, Dylan and his wife would have to face the consequences of their choices. They had depended on Dad's money and ignored the importance of family, and now they would have to deal with their debts on their own. A few days later, I found more messages from them on my answering machine, but I ignored them. They had started working at a new factory job, but from what I heard, they were arguing constantly, and a divorce seemed likely. I was relieved, and I had no intention of letting them interfere in my life or in the business that I was now in charge of. From here on, I planned to fully focus on growing the company as Dad had wanted. My decision to cut all ties with Dylan and his wife was final. I felt a sense of peace, knowing that I had taken control of my life and respected my father's wishes. In the end, I found my own form of closure. They had to live with the outcome of their actions, and I could finally move forward, knowing that my father's legacy was in safe hands. I'm Lily Rose, 34 years old, born and raised in San Jose. My life is all about gems and jewelry, just like it was for my parents and grandparents. Our family's jewelry store, Rose Gems, is located in San Jose's upscale shopping district. It's not just a store to me, it's my entire world. While other kids were playing in parks, I was spending time in the workshop. Instead of learning to ride a bike, I was learning how to cut stones. My dad would often sit me on his lap, guiding my small hands with his large, rough ones as we worked together. "Remember, Michelle," he'd say with a gruff but gentle voice, "it's not just about making something beautiful. It's about creating something with a story." Our family has a secret. No, we're not secretly royalty or anything like that. It's a special technique for processing gems that makes them shine like nothing else. This secret has been passed down through 5 generations and is what makes rose gems stand out. Guard this secret with your life, Lily. My dad told me on my 23rd birthday. It's not just our past. It's our future. And I did. I guarded it fiercely. It was my responsibility, my burden, and my key to success in a world that often didn't take young women seriously. Rose Gems didn't just succeed.
It thrived.
We had loyal customers who loved the unique brilliance of our pieces. Other jewelers tried to figure out our secret, but none could. The Gemstone Society's annual gala was always a glamorous event, but that year felt different. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was the way my new emerald dress fit me perfectly, but I felt amazing that night. I moved through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces and making small talk. The room was filled with designer gowns and tailored suits, with everyone wearing jewels that probably cost more than my first car. "Lily, darling, you look fabulous," gushed Mary, one of our regular clients. She grabbed my hands, her eyes locking onto the ring I was wearing. "Is this one of your new pieces?" "It's stunning." I smiled, feeling proud. "I just finished it last week," I said. "It's part of our new Midnight Sky collection." "I must have won," Laura declared. "I'll stop by the shop next week." She then drifted off to chat with her friends. I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned around to see the most captivating pair of blue eyes I'd ever seen. "Excuse me," said the owner of those eyes, smiling in a way that could melt ice. I couldn't help but overhear. "You're Lily Rose, right?" I nodded, suddenly feeling shy. "That's me. And you are?" "Paul James," he replied, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard great things about your work." The name hit me hard. James. The James were jewelry royalty, owners of one of the largest jewelry empires in the country. And here was their heir, talking to me like I was the most interesting person in the room. "The pleasure's all mine," I managed to say, shaking his hand. "I didn't know that James would be here tonight." Paul laughed, a warm sound that made me feel like we were sharing a private joke. "We usually skip these events, but I insisted on coming this year. I've been following your work, Lily. You're making waves in the industry." I felt my cheeks flush. "That's very kind of you to say." "It's the truth," he said, his eyes sparkling. "Actually, I was hoping we could discuss a potential collaboration. How about dinner next week?" My heart skipped a beat. A collaboration with the James could take Rose Gems to the next level. But a small voice in my head whispered a warning. They were our biggest competitors. Could they be trusted? I pushed the thought aside. This was business, nothing more. "Dinner sounds great," I heard myself say. Paul's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant set it up." He glanced over my shoulder and frowned slightly. "I'm afraid I have to mingle, but I'm looking forward to our dinner, Lily." As he walked away, I felt like I was floating. Paul James had sought me out, me, Lily Rose, the girl who spent more time with gems than people. The rest of the night was a blur. I danced, laughed, and networked, but my mind kept drifting back to those blue eyes and that dazzling smile. Paul chose a trendy restaurant in Capitola Beach, the kind of place where San Jose's elite came to see and be seen. As I walked in, I spotted him immediately, looking incredibly handsome in a tailored suit. He stood up as I approached, his eyes lighting up. "Lily," he said, taking my hand, "you look stunning." I felt a flutter in my stomach, but quickly pushed it aside.
Thank you, Paul.
"You clean up pretty well yourself." As we sipped our wine, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about our shared love for jewelry, swapping stories about tough clients and challenging designs. I found myself relaxing, drawn in by Paul's wit and charm. "So," I said as our main courses arrived, "you mentioned a possible collaboration at the gala. What did you have in mind?" Paul leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I've been following your work for a while now, Lily. The way you bring out the brilliance in gems is unlike anything I've seen before. I think a partnership between Rose Gems and James Jewelry could really change the industry." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold statement. How would this partnership work?" We have the resources and the reach, Paul explained. You have the skill and the innovation. Together, we could create a line that combines the best of both our worlds. It sounded tempting, I had to admit, but years of guarding our family secret made me cautious. And what about our individual techniques, our trade secrets?
Paul held up his hands.
Those would stay separate, of course. This would be about combining our strengths, not sharing our secrets. I nodded slowly, turning the idea over in my mind. It's an interesting proposition. I'd need to think about it and discuss it with my team. Of course, Paul said with an understanding smile. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. As dinner went on, our conversation shifted from business to more personal topics. Paul told me about growing up in the shadow of the James Empire and the pressure to live up to his family name. I found myself opening up about my own experiences, the weight of carrying on the Rose legacy. Before I knew it, we were seeing each other regularly. Paul swept me off my feet with grand gestures and intimate moments. 2 weekends, he surprised me with a spontaneous trip to the Hawaii. Pack a bag, he said, showing up at my door with a mischievous grin. We're going on an adventure. I hesitated, thinking about the orders I needed to fill. Paul, I can't just leave. I have work. He silenced me with a kiss. The work will be there when you get back. When's the last time you took a break, Lily? I couldn't remember, and that made me pause. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did need a break. The Hawaii felt like a dream. We spent our days relaxing on beautiful beaches, snorkeling in clear waters, and our nights dancing under the stars. It was amazing being the focus of Paul's attention. When we got back to San Jose, our relationship kept growing stronger. Paul would surprise me with rare orchids flown in from Thailand, their delicate petals showing how thoughtful he was. We'd spend evenings at fancy restaurants or quiet nights at home, talking for hours about everything and nothing. But it wasn't always perfect. The first time Paul took me to meet his parents, I felt like I was walking into a lion's den. His mother, Jessica James, looked me up and down with barely hidden dislike. So, you're the little jeweler Paul has been spending so much time with, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I straightened up and met her gaze. That's right, Lily Rose of Rose Gems. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. James. Paul's father, Brian James, was a bit friendlier, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. Rose Gems, he mused, you've been making quite a name for yourself lately. Impressive for such a small operation. The dinner was full of backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults. At one point, Jessica accidentally spilled her red wine on my dress. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said, not sounding sorry at all. I suppose your hands must be too rough from all that manual labor to hold delicate glassware properly. I forced a smile, even as I seethed inside. No worries, Mrs. James. Accidents happen. Paul squeezed my hand under the table, showing silent support. Later, as he drove me home, he apologized over and over. I'm so sorry about my parents, he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. They can be difficult. I sighed, looking out at the San Jose skyline. It's okay. I'm sure they're just protective of you. Paul shook his head. It's not okay. You're important to me, Lily. They need to accept that. His words warmed my heart, pushing away the lingering chill from his parents' cold reception. As weeks turned into months, I found myself falling harder for Paul. He was everything I didn't know I wanted: charming, worldly, and clearly in love with me. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated for more than just my work. We had been dating for about 6 months when he surprised me with a trip to London. Pack your bags, darling, he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. We're off to the city of love. Soon, I found myself in London, strolling hand in hand with Paul along the Seine, marveling at the architecture and indulging in rich English cuisine. It was like a dream. On our last night in London, Paul took me to dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant with a view of the Tower of London. As we finished our dessert, he suddenly looked nervous. Lily, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand, these past months have been the happiest of my life. I can't imagine my life without you. Then, to my surprise, he stood up and got down on one knee beside our table. The other diners gasped and turned to watch. "Lily Rose," Paul said, pulling out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" I stared at the ring in shock. It was beautiful, though a small part of me couldn't help but notice it wasn't as stunning as some of my own creations. But I quickly pushed that thought aside and focused on the man kneeling before me, his eyes full of hope and love. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." When we returned to San Jose, reality set in. Paul's parents insisted on throwing us an engagement party, and I found myself thrown into a world of high society that I had only ever seen from the outside. The party was a lavish affair at the James Mansion. As I mingled with San Jose's elite, I couldn't help but feel out of place. These people lived in a world of old money and privilege, so different from mine. Jessica James cornered me by the champagne fountain, her smile as sharp as a diamond-tipped saw. "Lily, darling, I must say we were all quite surprised when Paul announced your engagement. It's not often a James marries outside our social circle." Before I could respond, Paul appeared at my side, placing a protective arm around my waist. "Mother, I hope you're not giving Lily a hard time." Jessica's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course not, darling. I was just welcoming Lily to the family." Later that night, as Paul and I slow danced under the crystal chandeliers, he leaned in close. "I have an idea," he whispered. "Why don't you make a special piece for my mother as a peace offering? Show her what you can do." I hesitated. The Rose family's secret wasn't something I shared easily, not even with my fiancé. But maybe Paul was right, maybe this could be a way to bridge the gap between our two worlds. The weeks after our engagement were a whirlwind of wedding planning. I threw myself into creating the perfect necklace for Jessica, hoping it would be the olive branch that could finally win her over. I spent countless hours in my workshop, pouring my heart and soul into the piece. I used rare pink diamonds and a flawless blue sapphire from my father's private collection. It was meant to be my masterpiece, a testament to my skill and the Rose family secret. One evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on the clasp, Paul stopped by the workshop. His eyes widened. "Lily, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like it." I felt a surge of pride. "Do you think your mother will like it?" Paul nodded, his eyes still fixed on the necklace. "She'd be a fool not to. The way it catches the light, it's almost magical." I smiled, pleased with his reaction. That's the Rose touch. The next week, I was at the James Mansion for another wedding planning session when I suddenly heard raised voices down the hall. Curious, I slipped out of the room and followed the sound. As I got closer, I could make out what they were saying. "You're being ridiculous, Paul," came Brian's deep voice. "This marriage is a golden opportunity. Don't tell me you're getting cold feet now." "It's not like that," Paul protested. "But nothing," Jessica's sharp voice cut in. "You've done well, darling. She's eating out of the palm of your hand. Soon we'll have everything we need." My heart pounded in my chest as I edged closer to the partially open door. Through the crack, I saw Paul pacing, sipping wine from a glass. "You should see how eagerly she's making that necklace," he said, and I felt my world tilt. "She has no idea she's handing over the keys to her entire legacy." Jessica's laugh was cold and cruel. "And to think we almost objected to you marrying that little nobody. I must say, Paul, your acting skills have improved tremendously. She actually believes you love her." I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. This couldn't be happening, it had to be a mistake. But Brian's next words shattered any doubt. "Once we have the Rose secret, we'll corner the market," he said, smug satisfaction in his voice. "Who cares if her quaint little shop goes under? It's just business after all." I felt sick. My vision blurred with unshed tears as the full weight of their betrayal hit me. Paul, the man I thought I loved, the man I had agreed to marry, had been using me all along. The days following this shocking discovery were a blur of emotions and careful planning. On the surface, I played the part of the excited bride-to-be perfectly. I gushed over flower arrangements, fretted about seating charts, and continued working on Jessica's necklace. But inside, I was seething with rage and plotting my revenge. "How's the necklace coming along, darling?" Paul asked one evening, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I worked in my studio. I resisted the urge to pull away from his touch. Almost done, I replied, forcing a smile. Your mother is going to love it. Late into the night, after Paul had gone home, I started working on a new collection. Each piece was a work of art, telling the story of betrayal through intricate designs and carefully selected gems. But jewelry wasn't my only focus. One day, I hacked into Paul's home computer and downloaded all the files I could find. I spent hours going through James' company documents, searching for any signs of wrongdoing. It was tedious work, but my determination kept me going. One night, while reviewing a stack of financial reports, something caught my eye. The James had been systematically replacing high-quality gems with cheaper ones in their jewelry, scamming their customers out of millions. My next challenge was gathering evidence of their plot against me. I bought a small, high-quality recording device and carried it with me everywhere. It felt wrong, but I reminded myself that they started this game, I was just finishing it. As the final week before the wedding arrived, I put the finishing touches on my plan. I had evidence of the James gem scam, recordings of their scheme against me, and a collection that would shock San Jose's elite to its core. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect San Jose day. As I arrived at the beachfront venue, my heart was pounding, but my resolve was strong. I clutched the velvet-lined case containing my new collection and all the evidence I'd gathered like a lifeline. "Lily, there you are," Paul's best man, Eric, called out as I entered. "Everyone's been looking for you. Are you ready?" I gave him a tight smile. "More ready than you know." As I was ushered into a private room to wait, I could hear the murmur of guests arriving outside. San Jose's elite, all gathered to witness what they thought would be the society wedding of the year. If only they knew. The wedding march began to play, and I started my walk down the aisle. Faces turned to watch me, smiling and expectant. I saw Jessica and Brian in the front row, looking smug and satisfied. Paul waited at the altar, beaming at me. But as I reached the altar, instead of taking Paul's hand, I turned to face the guests. "I'm afraid there won't be a wedding today," I announced, my voice clear and strong. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Paul's face twisted in confusion. "Lily, what are you doing?" I ignored him and addressed the guests instead. "Instead, I'll be unveiling my newest collection, The Betrayal of Christ." With that, I opened my case and began to take out the pieces one by one, explaining the meaning behind each one. The snake bracelet stood for deceit, the shattered diamond ring symbolized broken trust, and the color-changing teardrop earrings reflected the shifting nature of lies. As I spoke, I saw the look of understanding and horror appear on the James faces, but I wasn't done yet. "For the grand finale," I said, pulling out Jessica's necklace, a special piece with a hidden message. I held it up to the light, revealing the word liar spelled out in pink diamonds. The crowd gasped, this time a mix of shock and admiration. "Lily, stop this nonsense right now," Brian James shouted, his face red with anger. But I was beyond stopping. I pulled out the documents I had gathered and the recordings I had made. "The James aren't just liars in love," I announced. "They're liars in business, too." I proceeded to lay out the evidence of their gem scam, playing recordings of their plot against me and Rose Gems. With each revelation, the crowd's murmurs grew louder, and shocked faces turned toward the James, seeking an explanation. "This is preposterous," Jessica shrieked, but her voice was shaking. As security began to escort the furious James out, I addressed the crowd one last time. "I stand before you not as a bride, but as a businesswoman protecting her legacy. Rose Gems will continue to create beauty and brilliance without compromising our integrity." The aftermath was chaos. Reporters who had come to cover a society wedding found themselves with a much bigger story. Photos of my triumphant face and stunning jewelry were splashed across social media and magazines worldwide. In the days that followed what the press dubbed the wedding that wasn't, my life became a whirlwind of interviews, legal meetings, and damage control. The story exploded beyond San Jose, capturing national attention. My phone rang nonstop with calls from reporters, industry insiders, and even Hollywood producers interested in my story. I sat in my workshop, surrounded by half-finished pieces and stacks of newspapers, all featuring my face on the front page. The headlines ranged from Jewel of Deception, Heiress Exposes $1 million Scam, to Love, Lies, and Luxury, the Rose James Saga. The James empire crumbled under the weight of the scandal, with multiple lawsuits filed against them. My best friend and now lawyer, Sandra, burst through the door, her arms full of more newspapers and legal documents. "Lily," she said, dropping everything on my workbench, "we need to talk strategy. The press is having a field day, and we've got at least a dozen interview requests over the next few weeks." I carefully chose which interviews to give. I talked about the need for honesty in the jewelry business, the importance of stricter rules, and my vision for a more ethical industry. As the weeks turned into months, the media attention started to fade, but my determination only grew stronger. I focused all my energy on rose gems, pushing myself to create more innovative designs while staying committed to ethical sourcing. One evening, as I was locking up the shop, a woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. "Miss Rose," she said hesitantly, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you." I tilted my head, confused. "Thank me? For what?" She smiled sadly. "I bought a James piece for my 25th wedding anniversary. After your exposé, I had it appraised. It turns out the stone wasn't nearly as valuable as they claimed. Thanks to you, I was able to get my money back." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm glad I could help." As she walked away, I realized that my actions had affected real people, not just faceless customers. The scandal that had almost ruined me had instead sparked positive change. And I, Lily Rose, was just getting started. I never expected a phone call to change everything. "You think you deserve that money," my stepmother, Mary, sneered over the phone. "That trust fund belongs to Patricia now. She's better than you'll ever be." Her words hit me like sharp knives. I gripped the edge of the hotel desk, trying to steady my breathing. My heart pounded, but I refused to let her hear the panic in my voice. Mary sounded proud, almost happy, as she told me the news. She had taken the money my mother had left for me. "My name is Madison Bailey, and I am 29 years old. I thought I had finally escaped my family's toxic drama. I work in pharmaceutical sales, traveling across the country most weeks. Today should have been just another Saturday in New York, preparing for a client meeting. Instead, I was listening to Mary brag about stealing my inheritance." "Thanks for letting me know," I said, keeping my voice calm. I knew Mary wanted a reaction, tears, anger, maybe even begging. But I gave her nothing. I could almost picture her face twisting in frustration. "That's all you have to say?" she demanded. "Patricia needs that money for her wedding and new house. And you're just going to waste it on your meaningless sales job." I thought about my mother. She had worked hard to build a business from nothing. Before she passed away when I was 17, she set up a trust fund for me so I could follow my dreams. But Mary had been after that money ever since she married my dad, just 3 years after my mom's death. I took a deep breath. "Is there anything else?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Mary went quiet. That silence told me everything. She had expected this to be easy, but she had no idea what I had done 7 months ago. Back then, I met with Mr. Ryan, my mother's old lawyer. He had warned me that Mary was asking a lot of questions about my trust fund. That raised a red flag. Together, we made sure there were legal protections in place. Any unauthorized attempts to take the money would not only be blocked but could lead to serious legal trouble. Mary had no clue. "You've always been such a disappointment," she spat, trying one last time to make me break. I almost laughed. A disappointment? Because I refused to let her steal from me? Because I didn't beg her for approval like my stepsister Patricia always did? I had spent years trying to escape Mary's cruelty. Now I finally saw her for what she was: bitter, greedy, and desperate. "Goodbye, Mary," I said, hanging up. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. The storm inside me started to calm. Mary thought she had won, but she had no idea what was coming. "Your stepsister deserves this more than you ever did," Mary's words rang in my ears as I ended the call. I turned to look out my hotel window at the New York skyline, my hands trembling, but not from fear. Everything was documented. Every call, every attempt, every lie. Mary had finally pushed too far, and I was ready. Living with her had been like walking on eggshells ever since my mom died from cancer when I was 17. My dad, lost in his grief, had remarried just 3 years later. That's when Mary and her daughter, Patricia, moved in. Patricia was 13 at the time, and from the very beginning, the tension was unbearable. My mom had worked hard to build her pharmaceutical consulting business from the ground up. She wanted to make sure I had a secure future. The trust fund she left me wasn't just money, it was a piece of her, a way of protecting me even after she was gone. But Mary didn't see it that way. To her, the trust fund was unfair. In her mind, I had an advantage that Patricia didn't, and she made it clear she wasn't going to accept that. "Your mom wouldn't want you to be so selfish," she would say, her voice dripping with fake concern.
"We're all family now.
"You should share." But we weren't family. Not really. Not in the ways that mattered. While my dad drowned himself in work to avoid his pain, Mary took control. She slowly pushed me to the side, making Patricia the center of everything. Every little thing Patricia did was celebrated: good grades, dance recitals, even just finishing a school project. Meanwhile, my hard work was ignored. When I earned scholarships and got accepted into a top business school, there was barely a mention of it at home. Mary made sure my dad only saw what she wanted him to see. The moment I truly understood how deep her manipulation went was on my college graduation day. I had worked tirelessly, graduated at the top of my class, and already secured a great job. It was supposed to be one of the proudest days of my life. But my dad wasn't there. "Patricia has a cold. She needs her father right now," Mary had told him. That was when I knew nothing would change unless I made a change. So, the very next day, I packed my things and left. I focused on building my own life, my own success. I worked hard in pharmaceutical sales, traveling across the country, making something of myself without relying on anyone. And the trust fund? I left it untouched. Not because I didn't need it, but because I knew accessing it would mean another fight with Mary. She would never stop trying to control me. But now, standing in my hotel room, I knew the fight was finally over. Mary had made her final move, and she had no idea what was coming next. Every time I visited home, Mary would make rude comments about how lucky I was. She always talked about how Patricia had to struggle without the same advantages I had. 7 months ago, Mr. Ryan, my mom's old lawyer, called me with a warning. He told me Mary had been asking a lot of questions about my trust fund. That's when everything made sense. She had been waiting for the perfect moment to take what wasn't hers. But I wasn't that scared, helpless 17-year-old girl anymore. I was my mother's daughter, and she had taught me well. I knew how to protect what was mine. The trust fund wasn't just money. It was my mother's hard work, her legacy, her way of making sure I had a future. That evening, sitting in my hotel room, I pulled out a small photo of my mom, the one I always carried with me. She was smiling, full of confidence, the kind of woman I had always wanted to become. This trust fund was meant to be my safety net, my chance to take risks and build something of my own, just like she did. I took a deep breath and dialed Mr. Ryan's number. My hands were steady, even though anger still burned inside me. He picked up on the second ring, his voice calm and familiar. "Mary finally made her move," I said, getting straight to the point. "She says she transferred everything to Patricia." "I was expecting this," he replied. "I got an alert this morning that someone tried to access the account." "Don't worry, Madison. The extra security we put in place worked exactly as planned. Every attempt was blocked and recorded." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. "So, nothing was actually transferred?" "Not a single penny," he confirmed. "But we have everything we need to prove attempted fraud. The evidence is solid." He paused before asking, "Would you like me to move forward with the next steps?" I thought about everything Mary had done. The manipulation, the cruel comments, how she had slowly turned my father against me. She had always been so sure she could control the situation. She never even considered that I might be 2 steps ahead of her. I had waited long enough. Yes, I said firmly. It's time to end this. Send the evidence to the family lawyer and make sure my dad sees everything. I want him to see exactly what his wife tried to do. Consider it done, Mr. Ryan said. Then he added, Madison, your mother would be proud. She always said you were smarter than people gave you credit for. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and booked an earlier flight home. My client meeting could wait. I had a family issue to deal with, and this time, I was the one in control. I landed in Los Angeles the next morning. The autumn air was cold and sharp. My dad's house, the house I grew up in, looked the same, but something felt different. Maybe that something was me. I had called my dad to let him know I was coming, but I didn't mention Mary's phone call. Some things needed to be said face to face. When I walked into the living room, they were all there: Dad, Mary, and Patricia. Mary's confident smile faded the moment she saw me. Confusion flashed across her face. She had expected me to be angry or upset. Instead, I was calm. Madison, my dad said, looking surprised. I thought you were coming later. Is everything okay? Actually, Dad, we need to talk. I took out my phone and the file Mr. Ryan had sent me. Mary called me yesterday. She told me she took all the money from my trust fund and gave it to Patricia. I thought you should see exactly what happened. Mary's face turned pale. I was just trying to help Patricia, she started, her voice shaking. Don't, I said firmly. My voice was steady, cold. Every time you tried to access my account, it was recorded. Every phone call, every forged signature, every lie, it's all in here. I handed my dad the file. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. With each one, his expression grew darker. Mary, what did you do? He whispered. She's lying. Patricia blurted out, her face red with anger. She's always been jealous of me. I didn't even look at her. Instead, I pulled out another document, the full trust fund statement. The money is still there, I said. Safe and untouched. Mary tried to steal it, but she failed. I knew about her plans months ago, and I made sure she wouldn't succeed. Mary's eyes widened in shock. You set me up, she spat. No, I replied calmly. I protected what was mine, just like my mother taught me. The room went silent. My dad kept reading, his eyes moving over every detail, every fake email Mary had sent to the bank, every forged signature, every sneaky move she had made to steal my inheritance. It was all there in black and white. I did this for our family, Mary tried to argue, her voice weak. Patricia needed. Stop, my dad interrupted. His voice broke. Just stop, Mary. His hands tightened around the papers. His face was full of pain as he looked up at me. I hadn't seen that look on my dad's face since my mom died. Madison, I had no idea, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Of course you didn't, I said softly. Mary made sure of that. Mr. Ryan had put everything in order. Years of proof showing how Mary had tried to turn my dad against me while secretly trying to take my trust fund. The latest documents showed her failed attempt to transfer the money and the angry phone calls she made to the bank afterward. This is ridiculous, Patricia shouted, jumping up, her face red. Mom was just trying to make things fair. Gab has always had everything handed to her. I turned to my stepsister, feeling both sorry for her and frustrated. Handed to me? I repeated. I worked through college, built my career from nothing, and never touched that trust fund. Mom left it to me because she wanted me to have choices just like she had. But Mary couldn't stand that, could she? Mary's mask finally slipped. Her face twisted in anger. You ungrateful little. I cut her off before she could finish. I've already filed charges, I said firmly. The bank has all the evidence of attempted fraud. Mr. Ryan is handling everything. I turned to my dad, meeting his eyes. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, I said, but you needed to know the truth. The weight of 13 years of lies and manipulation filled the room. My dad looked at Mary like he was seeing her for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw. Then everything changed. My dad stood up, his hands shaking as he gripped the papers. Mary, he said, his voice filled with quiet anger. I want you out of this house.
Tonight.
What? Mary's voice shot up in panic. You can't be serious. After everything I've done for this family? Done for this family, my dad repeated, his tone sharp. You tried to steal from my daughter. You forged my signature. You've been lying to me for years. Patricia started crying. But for the first time, they weren't her usual fake tears. She looked truly shocked, like she was just realizing how serious this was. The police will want to speak with you, I told Mary. Mr. Ryan has already filed the reports. The bank's fraud department is involved now. Mary's eyes burned with fury. You planned this, she hissed. You knew I would try to take the trust fund. No, Mary, I said calmly. You planned this. I just made sure I was ready for when you did. I turned back to my dad. There's more, I said. Mr. Ryan found proof that she's been taking money from your account too. Small amounts over the years, but they've added up. My dad's face went pale. He sank into his chair, looking completely devastated. I felt a small pang of guilt for hurting my dad, but he needed to know the truth. Get out, he repeated to Mary. Both of you. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. Mary and Patricia rushed to pack their things, throwing blame and tears in every direction. I didn't respond. Instead, I stood quietly by the window, the same window where I used to wait for my mom to come home from work. I could almost hear her voice in my head. Always be prepared, sweetheart. And never let anyone take what's rightfully yours. In the weeks that followed, my dad and I had long overdue conversations. One evening, we sat in the kitchen, the same place where my mom used to help me with my homework. For the first time in years, we really talked. I failed you, my dad said, staring into his coffee cup. After your mom died, I was so afraid of being alone that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. We both made mistakes, I admitted. I could have told you sooner about Mary, but I wanted proof first. I needed you to see it for yourself. The legal process moved quickly. Mary faced charges for attempted fraud and financial theft. She tried to play the victim, claiming she only wanted to make things fair between me and Patricia. But the evidence was overwhelming. The bank had records of all the times she tried to access my trust fund over the years. A few weeks later, Patricia sent me an email. She said she had no idea what her mother had been planning. I wasn't sure if I believed her, but I knew she was struggling to come to terms with the truth. I'm sorry, she wrote. I always thought you had everything handed to you. Mom made it seem like you were the lucky one. But now I see she was just jealous of what your mom built for you. It wasn't an apology that could fix everything, but it was a start. With Mr. Ryan's help, I finally took a step toward my own dream. I started my own business consulting firm, something I had always wanted to do but had been too cautious to pursue. The trust funds my mom left me became the seed money for my new venture, just as she had intended. Your mother would be proud, Mr. Ryan told me during one of our meetings. She always said you had her business sense and your father's heart. She knew you'd do great things when you were ready. My dad started visiting me for lunch every week. Sometimes we talked about Mom, sharing memories that Mary had made too uncomfortable to discuss for years. Other times, we talked about the future. He was finally starting to look like himself again, the dad I remembered before Mom got sick. You know what your mom used to say about you? He asked one day. She said you were like a diamond. Pressure only made you stronger. Life started to fall into place. My consulting firm grew fast, attracting clients who liked my honest advice and industry knowledge. I hired a small team, including Elizabeth, a talented analyst who reminded me of my mom, same drive, same determination to prove herself. Mary's trial ended with a plea deal. She avoided jail but had to pay back a large amount of money and was banned from working in any financial role. The last I heard, she had moved to Oklahoma to live with her sister. Patricia stayed in Los Angeles, working as a teacher's assistant. We didn't talk much, just the occasional email. Meanwhile, my dad focused on rebuilding our relationship. He started sharing stories about Mom that he had kept buried for years, how they met at a business conference, how they struggled to start her company, the late nights planning their future. Each story helped heal a little piece of what we had lost. One evening, as we sorted through old photos in the attic, we found Mom's business journal. Inside, there was a letter addressed to me, written just weeks before she passed. My dearest Madison, I'm leaving you more than money. I'm leaving you the freedom to choose your own path. Don't let anyone dim your light or tell you what you deserve. You are stronger than you know, smarter than they give you credit for, and capable of anything you set your mind to. Trust yourself. I do. Love, Mom. Those words became my daily motivation. I framed the letter and hung it in my office as a reminder of where I came from and where I was going. My dad retired and started volunteering at a grief counseling center, helping other families navigate loss without losing themselves. Sometimes he even helped out at my firm, bringing years of experience and a fresh perspective that balanced my approach perfectly. Looking back, I realized everything had led me to this moment. 6 years later, I am amazed at how much has changed. My consulting firm has grown to 4 cities, helping pharmaceutical companies improve their operations, just like Mom used to do. The trust fund she left me didn't just secure my future, it became the foundation for helping others build theirs. Dad retired completely last year, but he still visits my office to mentor younger employees. He says it helps him stay connected to Mom's legacy. Every Sunday, we have lunch together, making up for all the years we lost because of Mary's lies. The biggest lesson I learned wasn't about money or betrayal, it was about standing up for myself. Mom knew that one day, I would have to fight for what was mine, so she made sure I had the tools to do it. She taught me that real strength isn't just about being tough. It's about being prepared and knowing when to act. Sometimes, I visit the house where I grew up. Dad still lives there, but it feels different now. The walls have been repainted, the furniture rearranged, and every trace of Mary is gone. Last week, in Mom's old office, which Dad turned into a library, I found her collection of business books. Inside one, she had written notes about teaching me to run the company someday. I never got the chance to learn from her, but I am building something of my own now. Every choice I make in my business carries her wisdom. The trust fund she left me wasn't just money. It was her belief in me. It gave me the strength to stand my ground when someone tried to take what was mine. Mary's attempt to steal my inheritance taught me an important lesson. Sometimes, people show you exactly who they are, and the best thing you can do is be ready. Now, I am grateful for those hard years because they shaped me into someone my mom would be proud of, someone who doesn't just survive challenges but grows stronger from them. Dad and I have reorganized the family photo albums, keeping only the memories that truly matter. On my desk at work, I keep my favorite picture, Mom and me in her office, both laughing about something I can't even remember. That photo reminds me every day that while some people try to tear you down, others lift you up in ways that last a lifetime. On the anniversary of my mother's passing, my dad and I visited her grave together. We brought fresh flowers from her favorite garden, a tradition we started that first year. As we stood there, I shared with him the letter I had found in her journal. He read it silently, his hands shaking slightly as he held the worn paper. "She was always thinking ahead," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "Even when she was fighting for her own life, she was fighting for yours too." In that moment I knew she had never really left me. I realized that every step I had taken to protect what my mom built, every time I stood my ground, and every choice I made to create something meaningful, that was her final gift to me. "She would be so proud of you," Dad said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "And I couldn't be prouder to call you my daughter." We stood there in silence, remembering her. Some wounds never fully heal, but love and resilience can turn even the deepest pain into strength.